Hello and welcome to Dragons, Unicorns, and Other Creative Creatures. I'm Dr. Kevin Ross Emery and I'm going to be your host today. Unfortunately, Rona Gofstein could not join us for today's show, but that doesn't, the show must go on. So the show will go on. We are here to celebrate today. We're going to celebrate a number of different things. The 4th of July is not too far behind us. But we also, today, we are going to have a author on who has 2 recent books and one book that's out, one book that's coming out, and then one that's going to be shortly followed that. So this young lady is a prolific author. We're going to get to her in just a minute. But, sometimes you just have to roll with it. I came in, I sat down, and I said, "There's no chair beside me." And they said, "Oh no, Rona's missing in action." I went, "Really? Jersey girl, huh?" Never can tell when they're going to run off. Yeah, what can you say? But one of the things is we're now in the height of summer, and there's a lot of really good things going on in the parks. Parks all over New Hampshire and all over whatever area you're in as well, I'm sure. There's summer theater, there's concerts, there's all sorts of arts going on. And those arts need your support. And they also, as we've discussed in other shows, are something to fill your soul. We also want to invite you, if you are an artist of any kind, would like to be on the show, to contact us. You'll see our email right below me. Normally I make Rona do it since she created it, but she's not here, so you're just going to have to read it. It's somewhere down here, I'm sure. And if it's not, it will be at the end of the show. But I have confidence. They'll put it down. They'll put it down here. Okay. So today's guest is a multi-talented author. She writes in more than one genre, and she also has a background where she's done some songs, some dance. She's done some theater, and she has had a reoccurring role in The Life of Rona, which is where she plays the character Rona Gofstein, a mother of 2 very precocious, very different, very interesting and endearing children, and a husband that shows up occasionally and is there occasionally, but we don't ever really see him on camera. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Rachel Kenley. Rachel, thank you for joining us.
Hey, everybody.
I want you to notice I have I'm so happy.
Boing, boing, boing.
My Tigger mug to celebrate these books of yours coming out. I wore my celebration beads.
I know, I'm very excited as well.
So I want to start a little bit with, we have people on this show and we ask them, what is your creative process? And so why don't you share with our viewers, what is Rachel Kenley's creative process?
Well, working on the 3rd book for the series right now, I can tell you it has a lot to do with pulling my hair out. And you know what, it really starts with getting your butt in the seat or in front of the piano or the computer, whatever it is, wherever it is you create. It's really taking that time. You're never going to make time. I haven't figured out how to fabricate it yet. I know I'm never going to find time. It hasn't been hiding somewhere that I didn't know. But when I take the time, when I honestly look at my schedule, look at my calendar, look at what's important to me, which is my creative world, and taking that time to do what I need to do to create, to write, to edit, to revise, whatever point I'm in a story. I think all artists need to make sure they're taking the time, setting the boundaries with the other people in their lives to have this time that fills, as you said, fills their soul.
Well, you know, there's a difference between a hobbyist and a professional.
Yeah.
And even saying those words as somebody who, you know, you're a professional creative, I'm a professional creative, and, you know, for me, creativity is part of my business. It's not the whole part, it's not my whole business. But when you do your job, you have a schedule. You create a schedule. And even if you're doing a part-time job, you have some kind of schedule.
Yep.
So creativity in the form of creating tangible, physical, creative stuff, like new classes or new books or new courses, you schedule the time. It's like just like anything else.
Yeah, and it has to be kept, for lack of a better word, sacred. You can't just say, well, my creativity, my time to create can be pushed aside because I need to do laundry. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are times when I will procrastinate and suddenly, you know, laundry actually does seem like a really good idea.
I'll bring you some.
I don't doubt it. But it's also important to notice when that's happening. And that's just usually because creativity also, there's a vulnerability that comes with it, I think, for a lot of us. There's a place where we're going to be sharing something, where others are going to be seeing an aspect of ourselves. Where we're in the when I'm in the creative process, I'm going to be seeing aspects of myself. I'm going to be learning about myself. I'm going to be delving into something emotional, something soft and squishy, something maybe occasionally hidden behind a wall. And that's why laundry seems like a much better idea at that time.
Yes, the whole vulnerability thing, definitely. And part of it is that getting people to respect creativity as a job is a job in of itself.
It can be. It shouldn't be, but it can be.
Yep. You know, whether you're practicing on your instrument or you're creating a new character for a book or whatever, that, you know, you have to look at it. I mean, doing a TV show and a radio show. I mean, you know, my radio show's been on for 12 years, and if I start to get lax, I can tell the quality of my show starts going down a little bit. You know, I'm just flying by the seat of my pants more. And, you know, sometimes that works and sometimes it misses a little.
Yeah, you can get away with it for a day or two or a show, but it's not where we live. It's not where, you're not sourcing anything new, and you're not filling yourself up at the same time that you're sharing. So yeah, it doesn't work for long.
One of the things about creativity is also that you have to schedule it in, or schedule in a time where you're focused on your creativity, because in the example of being an author, how many other things are there to do in writing a book besides writing the book?
Oh my gosh. You know, it's funny, people are like, you know, I want that New York contract so that I don't have to worry about marketing my book anymore. I'm like, well, unless you're planning to break onto the scene at a best-selling level, you will have to do marketing and publicity and email list building and audience connection and all of those pieces to increase your sales, increase your name recognition, increase your readership. That falls to the author for 90+% of writers, no matter who's publishing them, whether it's self or New York. And to me, that can be very creative too. So I don't stress out about it. I have people who say, "Oh, I hate publicity. I don't like doing publicity. I don't like doing marketing." Like it's some evil, awful word, or like it's the antithesis of creativity. You know, marketing kills creativity. It doesn't. Marketing is very creative. Marketing is the answering of a question and fulfilling a need. And that is what our books do. That's what our radio shows, television shows, art, music, and all that stuff. It fills a need. And you're just trying to reach the people who have that need.
Well, and I'm going to throw my 2 cents in on one of your one of your sentences. You said marketing is creativity. I'm going to do a slash and edit and put good marketing is creativity. Because there's a lot of really crappy marketing out there that's just something that's just been rechewed and spit back out.
This is sadly true.
Yes.
This is sadly true, but yeah, you know, if one more author tells me that I need to rebrand myself, I need a new tagline, I'm gonna reach across and throttle them, because branding isn't your tagline, and it's not your website, and it's not the colors you pick, and to teach them the distinction and the business aspects of things, and then when it doesn't work, they say, see, I can't do business, I can't market, I can't brand, I can't do any of this. And then these great books that they've spent hours on,
Hundreds of hours, yeah.
Hundreds of hours and potentially years on, never reach the readers who are going to become lifelong fans, which makes me really sad, because there's some amazing stories out there at all levels, again, from self-published to New York published and everything in between.
Now, you have a writer's school, correct?
Yeah, with another author, we created the Writers Business School to begin to teach writers the basics of business, the repeatable, quantifiable skills that will show you if your marketing and branding is working, that will enable you to keep reaching new readers using a platform rather than trying to sell your book to people. I've seen actually even good selling authors post, on Facebook, please buy my book and put up a review. Ouch. That just makes the rest of us look bad, and then and other writers look to this writer and say, oh, this is how you market. Buy my book. I'm like,
No, you have to engage people in the story. You need to make them curious. You want them to step into the world you've created. You have to invite them to come play.
And you want to invite them into your world. I mean, my books are about a number of different things, but what I engage my readers on always has its basis in desire. What do you desire? What have you always desired that you don't have in your life? What do you desire of currently more in your life? The whole concept of knowing, of living and learning your heart's desire has always been extremely important to me, because there are too many people who, if you say to them, well, what do you want? Have absolutely no answer. And I think that's heartbreaking.
And I think it's a sad commentary on our society, because we're almost trained out of thinking that what we want is important as children.
Has any value, and that's what I always, when I'm blogging on a book, yes, I'll write about the theme of the book, but it will also come back to how does this connect to living and learning your desire. Now, the author I am in partnership with for the Writers Business School, her passion is the importance and incredible impact of healthy communication. I mean, that is what she blogs on, teaches on. Her fiction, obviously, her characters need to communicate well, and if they're having trouble communicating, that's going to create conflict in the book, and that's what we want. But what she engages her readers in, and what she engages people in, is healthy communication. What I engage people in is living and learning your heart's desire. And then, once we've had that discussion, and you're like, yeah, I always wish I could, live, cook more, or open a restaurant, whatever it is. And then eventually somebody gets around to saying, well, what do you do? And, oh, I'm a writer. And now they're engaged with me. They can choose or not choose to be engaged with my books. They may not read in my genres. Chances are they know somebody who did. Romance is still the #1 selling genre, but I don't look to engage people based on my books. I look to engage people based on me.
So, and I want to get to your books, but we've got plenty of time.
But first you're going to engage me.
But first I'm going to engage you. First I'm going to support you to be engaging. How's that?
Ooh, that sounds wonderful.
So I've got some thoughts and theories, but I'm gonna roll it out to you first. Why do you think romance is still the #1 genre?
Because, oh my God, there's so many reasons. I think, first of all, women read more than men when it comes to fiction. Just as a numbers game, women read more than men. And women, we love reading about relationships. whether we choose the more general genre of women's fiction, which doesn't necessarily revolve around a relationship, but rather one woman's journey. Danielle Steele, Kristen Hanna, a couple of the others out there, that would be women's fiction. But romance is about relationships, and women are drawn to relationships. We want healthy relationships. We want many relationships. We want that one special relationship. I think we do all see and hope that there will be significant relationships in our lives that enable us to be our best selves. You know, to be with that person with whom you can be at your highest and at your lowest, and they get you and they support you and they're there for you. And whether you haven't gotten to that relationship yet, because I started reading romance when I was 14, or you have a great relationship in your life, I'm married now over 20 years, there's still something magical and special and wonderful about seeing a relationship come together, the two people grow in it, and then the two people grow together. And there's something about a happy ending.
Yeah.
And there's something about a happy ending.
Well, you know, we hear the term comfort food all the time. Mm-hmm. But there are many things that are comforting, and there can be, for someone who is a reader, comfort reading,
Yeah.
comfort movie watching,
Yep.
something that
One of my good friends, her comfort movie is Jaws. I kid you not. That is her one of her favorite absolute comfort movies.
So, and it's very interesting. You know, one of the things that I've been teaching and working with my clients on for years is that the human species in of itself is constantly falling in love.
Yes. And always looking for connection.
And always looking for connection, no matter how much they think they're not. Sometimes you fall in love with a new car or a new baseball pitcher for your favorite baseball team that's going to bring them to the pennant, or a book or a restaurant. But there's a certain endorphin that comes out that's part of what makes us human when we go through the process of falling in love. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I've watched couples actually get jealous when their partner has fallen in love with the baseball season.
Well, how many football widows have we heard of? You know. I mean, look at the word we use, as if she's lost her husband to this game.
And you know, I mean, and how often do you have, you know, the husband over here watching baseball and the woman over here is going, "Damn Yankees."
Yeah, I mean, I've met couples who are for opposing teams. That's always fun too.
Yeah. But we love to fall in love.
We do.
And we're always falling in love with something, whether we look at it from that way or not. You produce the same endorphins when you fall in love with your football team, mm-hmm. or your new best friend that just seems to be a perfect fit for a friendship, as we do when we fall in love with our spouse. It's the same endorphins. Yeah. So I think one of the reasons romance always stays so high is because we get to fall in love again. We get to fall in love again, mm-hmm. over and over again. Yeah. And it's interesting because as a reader, I also started reading, I started reading the old Harlequins when I was 11, 12, 13, around the same age you did. I was reading Harlequin romances. I find, and then I'll go long periods. And it's funny, I tend to go long periods when I'm single. I don't read romance. I read romance when I'm in relationship.
Ah, that's interesting.
Yeah. People would think it would be the polar opposite, it would be the opposite.
No, because sometimes, I'm not happy. I don't want to read about people who are happy. Give me slasher movies and murder and death and dismemberment. I'm miserable.
But I noticed that there's something very interesting because I took a long break from romance, mm-hmm. reading any kind of romance. And and there's romantic elements almost in any book you read of some kind.
Oh yeah, even horror.
Yes, and some people that think that that's all romance is a horror show.
Mm. I have a friend. I made her a T-shirt. You can still get it on Cafe Press. It says, "Ghouls, vampires, and witches I can believe in. Happy endings, not so much." Because that's what she said. She's like that. It always ends happily. I just can't get behind that. And I said, "You write about these wretched zombie creatures?" And she's like, "Yeah."
Yeah, I actually. What is it called? It's called, I'm probably gonna have to look it up, but I have a whole collection of poetry that's love poetry, and one of the books that came out was called, you think I remember the title of one of my own books, and I can't.
Can't remember my kids' names sometimes. So
Yeah, I know, but it basically is called Angst, Drama Queens, and Victimhood.
there you go.
And other love stories or whatever, and it's a book of love poetry. And and it's high energy, high drama sometimes,
It is, and then sometimes it's really quiet.
and really sweet. So talking about really sweet, talk about this new series of books that you have coming out.
I do. It's the Melusine's Daughters series. It's about 3 women, all of whom are mermaids. The first one is out, and this is my mock-up of the book. I don't have it actually yet in paperback, although it's coming out that way. But Scott Carpenter did my covers for this series. He did a brilliant job on the covers, which I was thrilled with. The first one takes place on the Jersey Shore, actually. The first book actually came out in a shorter version about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was intended to be a series, and it didn't sell well with that publisher, and then the publisher went under. And so I got all the rights back and started to work with a new publisher who had a carryover editor from me. Lori Perkins carried over from one to the other. And I said, you remember that Mermaid series? She goes, I love that Mermaid series. I'm like, can we do the rest of it? And she said, absolutely. So I went back to Waves of Pleasure and expanded it from about 50,000 words to 70,000. So it was a huge change. Changed the magical element in it a bit so that now there were 3 different magical pieces that now carry through the 3 books, Waves of Pleasure, Waves of Desire, and then the 3rd book, which will come out in August, Waves of Seduction.
Do we have those book covers? Can we get those book covers up?
They're gorgeous. I was so thrilled. We're always so nervous as writers, what will we get? This one was when Riverdale Avenue Press was new, so it was a very simple object cover for the glass stiletto. But the ones for the Waves of series, the Melusine's Daughters, I love. And there's a legend that I created for Melusine and why these bracelets, these magical bracelets, which these gorgeous sapphires in them exist. So, but what happened was, it's a funny story. I did an anthology of retold fairy tales a long time ago called Spellbound. And then I got a call from Lori Perkins who said, I have 2 questions for you. Who did the Little Mermaid story in your anthology? And do you think he or she would be willing to do a full-length novel on mermaids? They're going to be very big. And I said, well, I did the story on the Little Mermaid, and what did you have in mind? And that story was just called Legs. And she's a model, and the photographer, who's not the hero, but the photographer is just thrilled to death. Finally, a model who can't speak. Because she has, that one holds true to the Hans Christian Andersen one of that she has no voice. And then I said, sure, I'll do it. And then, we talked about the creative process. And here I am, like, mermaids. What do I know about mermaids? And what do I know about where they are in beaches and stuff? And of course, as I said, I grew up close to the Jersey Shore. And I said, well, what about a mermaid who comes on land on the Jersey Shore? And Lori's a New Yorker, and she's like, that's hysterical. Let's go with that, because mermaids and skee ball are just not something people have put together yet.
Well, I mean, when the mermaid comes out on the Jersey Shore, does she come out pre-blinged, or does she get blinged after she arrives?
No, she's pretty straightforward, just sort of flowy dresses and flats. She does not like shoes.
So when she's on land, she has legs.
When she's on land, she has legs, and she can choose to fin into her tail form when she's in the water. It's not like Splash, where the minute she gets wet, she automatically just ends up with this tail. It's a shape-shifting form of magic that she can control.
Okay, so in this case, mermaids are magical.
They're magical. There's a whole range of sentient ocean beings, and they're known as the Oceanides.
Okay.
So there's more than there's kelpies, which are water horses.
Yep.
And naiads and lamias and all sorts of.
Do you have mermen?
I do.
Oh, I can't wait till you do the Merman series.
I have a few characters from Merman, not in this one. Well, actually, the hero in the third book is half merman, half kelpie, which makes him a sea dragon.
Okay.
Because he has the ability to shapeshift either into human torso, mermaid legs, or fins, I should say, because it wouldn't be a mermaid, he'd be a merman, full horse, or horse and fin, which is a sea dragon type of look. So that's what he's known as.
I actually went to a seahorse, not a museum because they were all live, but I have about 75 close-up pictures of seahorses.
They're amazing.
Yeah, it really was.
They look like they shouldn't exist. They're just one of those things you kind of look at it and go, why?
And I never knew there was so many different kinds of
colors and sizes and yep.
Yeah. So now earlier when we were talking about your writing process, and then I want to dive into waves of pleasure. But earlier we were talking about scheduling. That you get a schedule when you work, and if you're a professional author, you have a schedule. And when I asked you, I said, there are other things you're doing than writing, and you were like, oh yeah, you do the marketing and the business and things like this. But people also don't always understand that an author has a ton of research to do, depending on what there are. And then there's those magical re-edits.
I actually give a workshop, and I've done it in several locations, literally coast to coast. I've done it in California and out here, called putting the vision in revision, the art of editing, because there is no book without editing. You don't turn in a first draft, even on as tight a deadline as I am on currently. You write a bad first draft. Sometimes really bad, sometimes worse than bad. Sometimes you go back and read it and go, who wrote this crap? And then you're, oh wait, that would be me. Holy crap, holy cow. But there's always something in there. You can work with what's there. You can't edit a blank page. So the knowing, you write, for me, I write the book. It gets to be its first draft form. And then two things happen in the editing process. First is the true revision process, where you go through and you find what's weak. And you kind of, I go through a process where, and this was suggested by somebody I heard speak once, named author Cecilia Tan. She's going through and go through the whole book and sort of deciding what the problems are. The heroine is weak, the hero is two-dimensional, there's not, figuring out what the problems are, ranking them according to what's most important, and then you go through and you fix the problems. Then you go back in later for language, and for me, for fleshing out. I write fairly, not quite skeletal, I do more than I used to, but you start adding the other senses. Usually one or two are in there automatically. Sight is usually in there, sometimes touch, but adding in smells and sounds and other things that need to be there to make a scene come to life tend to come in the revision and editing process. My first revision makes the book longer. My next revision will make it shorter from that point. I know some people who write huge and then keep getting smaller each time. And then some people whose first drafts are hardly more than almost an outline for where they want to go. And then it becomes like a skeleton, and they keep adding to it.
So, one writer to another.
Mm-hmm.
How important is the relationship between the writer and the editor?
Me, the editor, or my professional editor
Your professional editor.
Oh my God, it's vital. I tell people that I can always tell when an established author has either stopped listening to her editor or asked in her contracts not to be edited as much, because the pacing changes and there's repetition and there's all this stuff that doesn't need to be there. I always say I can do my own nails, but my manicurist does them a whole lot better than I ever can. I can do my own hair, but my hairdresser makes it look so much better. And I write well, but damn, my editor makes it so much better. I'll get the book back with the edits, and I'll be like, how did I miss that? Or they'll point out the things like, you skip 2 days, he's suddenly in this position when he was on that side of the room. Where did this piece of clothing disappear to? Or how did it suddenly reappear? I thought you took it off, and now he's still wearing it. Those continuity errors that you see in movies sometimes.
Yes.
My editors will catch that. They strengthen my language. They tighten things up. They get rid of clauses. And even though I go through to look for words that I have a tendency to repeat, God love, find and replace. And the words I use too many times, just, that, believe, the words that are weak, that should just kind of come out because they're there in part because it's almost how I talk. And then they need to come out because they don't fit in a finished product. They'll find all the pieces that I missed and tighten it up. So it's very important. You need to trust your editor. You need to accept that you need editing. I mean, everybody does. You're crazy to think you don't.
Now, I had an experience with a movie script I wrote, and what the person who was editing it looked at the movie script, and they were like, where did your dialogue is fabulous and your characters are three-dimensional and all of this stuff, but then they said, but this won't sell in Hollywood, so scrap it and start over. How important, and I share that because it actually, I was brought into the project to actually work with somebody else who had started writing and, had not got could only get 5 to 7% of what was needed to make the script work. So I wrote 90% of the script.
Yeah, literally, then we finally had something.
And they had something, but the reason I asked the question is, does your editor ever try to make you more commercially successful or just help you have a better book?
So far, just have a better book. I've never had anybody who came to me to say, if you made her younger, if you made her blonde, if you made him this, it would sell better.
Okay.
So far, so good on that one. I mean, I suppose it can happen, but at that point, you have to make a decision. Does this have anything to do then with the book I was writing?
Yep. So that's why I was curious. I wanted to throw that out because I wanted that.
Yeah, so far so good. Nobody's had to say, well, only women between the ages of, your heroine's too old or your hero doesn't have an exciting enough job.
Yeah.
Romance is pretty good that way. We're pretty broad-minded in the sense. I mean, every age, every job, they're not all alpha heroes. Beta heroes are wonderful as well. And
there has been, in my view of romance, something that has happened over the last 30 years.
Okay.
30, 35 years. Like I said, I took a break from romance. And then a couple of months back, I was laid up for about a week and was exhausted. And I was like, I can't. I just need to regroup. And where I read 11 or 12 new books. I just laid in bed and read and just was like,
Binged.
I just needed to. But what I found was I was drawn to go back to romance. I hadn't been in romance for a long time.
And you are in love.
And I am in love. So I went back to do romance. And I found that the female characters were, in some ways, much more real. They weren't showing up as the virgin protecting themselves. They weren't. They were I saw a grittiness and when I would read a book, and I would intentionally read a book that was a series, and I would read the first one. If I liked it and I liked that I could see who the characters were, I'd literally go in at the end of the first book and I'd buy every book in the series because I just wanted it on my Nook.
Yeah.
And I just wanted it there. And at 3 a.m, I didn't want to be figuring out how to get the next one if my days were nights and my nights were days.
That's
or whatever. And so I found that the world and the core characters brought me in, and that their situations were much more real and updated, and they weren't pretty, and they weren't as pink, and they weren't as fluffy,
Yeah, women are doing everything in romance novels, period. There was a time, and I love looking at the old category romances, the old Harlequins and stuff that you can find in thrift stores. and they're nothing but, they're nurses, they're
Teachers,
flight attendants. Some of them have some bigger jobs or bigger dreams, but these are all women with very distinct goals. And one of the great things normally is the fact that romance is actually the last thing on their minds, and of course probably is going to mess up whatever goal they're currently working toward. Good news is they'll make it work and it'll have a happy ending. But I'm getting, sadly, the 50 Shades of Grey series, for whatever you do think about it, one of the things that I think was unfortunate about it is we kind of backtracked a little to the all-powerful male, the mogul, the billionaire, and the lesser powerful, lesser, successful female. So the people who follow sort of that version, who like that in their romance, it's come back a little bit more. It had phased out pretty, not completely. It'll always will be there. There's still nannies, there are still cooks, there are still, characters, but they still are more fleshed out. But they're more, they're more, Lara Croft Tomb Raider type characters than ever before. If Angelina Jolie would play it, there's a romance heroine who will fit it.
Well, and one of the things I noticed, like in one of the series that I read, that I found very interesting, because it was one of those series that I bought all 7 books for, was that in one of the books, one of the brothers was a cowboy trying to save up money, blah, 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 blah. The quote-unquote heroine was a high-powered lawyer, making more money than he did, doing all sorts of stuff, and it was a very interesting dance. And it pushed at the old, he's going to be more successful, he's going to have the career. I was just like, okay, this is so different than when I started reading romance.
And they and if that's a conflict for the hero, you'll see it. And if it's a challenge for the heroine, you'll see it, but you won't see her giving it up.
Yep. So, we have a few minutes left.
Okay.
And what I want to do is I want you to engage me and our audience into this world.
Okay.
Bring me into the waves of pleasure. What can you share about your character that's going to make me want to run out and buy these 3 books? Or 2 and
then the third. Coming soon to a Nook and Kindle near you. Each of these books ended up having heroes and heroines that had something personal that they were going to need to overcome in order to not only have their happy ending with this other person, but to be able to have the lives that they've envisioned. There are things that they've been personally struggling with. And the external problem, which is that somebody is trying to the mermaids are the merfolk, I should say, are the largest of the oceanide races. And they're the ones pretty much in power, and somebody wants to take that from them. 3 mermaids hold the 3 stones of power: the stone of clarity, the stone of strength, and the stone of love, are in 3 different bracelets, and when they're united, they create one big band, which is probably the greatest source of magic on the planet, certainly known to the oceanides. So somebody wants all 3 of those. So he wants all 3 of my heroines, and he wants what they have. In the meantime, while the 3 of them are trying to make sure this does not happen, there are things that they're struggling with personally. In the first book, Lyria, my heroine, is struggling, and as is her matching hero there, she's struggling with self-acceptance. She is her people's most powerful healer, but it's a gift she was kind of born with, and is not one she really always wants or likes, and she would particularly like to run away from her responsibilities, or swim away from her responsibilities if she could. And she likes aspects of it, but really struggles with it. And the hero has this very definite idea of what success needs to look like for him, and he's had a huge setback when his business partner and friend betrayed him. And now he's come back to the Jersey Shore where he grew up, which he hates, that he's sort of back almost doing what he did like for his summer jobs when he was in high school and he does not feel successful, and she doesn't like where she is. So both of them have this place of self-acceptance that they really need to get to, not just to defeat the big bad, but to be able to move forward in their lives happily and with each other. If they don't do it, they're going to be in trouble. In the second book, Ways of Desire, Amina and Jonathan both need self-forgiveness. They've both had things happen that they've done or that happen because of them that they can't forgive themselves for, and that's holding them back.
Okay. And I noticed that the two sisters are both redheads.
They're actually cousins, but yes, those two are cousins. And Noreen, the third one, is dark.
Yeah, I could tell. I was looking around the thing.
She's got very dark hair, and so is he. The model I chose as the example for her has got these just wonderful big cat eyes and this very dark and these sort of Maleficent-like cheekbones naturally. Noreen and Fiyero, who are actually both half-breeds, which is the first. She has a Lamia father and he has a Kelpie father, and they both have mermaid mothers. For them, it's self-compassion.
So now the name of the series is?
Melusine's Daughters. She was the original holder of the 3 stones. And like many mermaid legends, her husband had, when he discovered who she was and what she was, she had given birth to 3 daughters, and he had her locked away until she could give him 3 sons. And to defeat him, she pulls all her magic into, she pulls her magic out into these bracelets, and she's given him an amulet to wear so that he's a human, and so that he can rule by her side in and out of water. She's combined 3 stones into an amulet. She shatters the amulet, she kills him, and she puts the 3 stones into these 3 bracelets to protect her daughters.
But these are not the daughters. These
are descendants.
Yeah. Okay.
Of that.
Okay, because I was a little confused.
I'm not even positive how Noreen's. They figure somebody had an affair somewhere, and
a shady past.
Yes.
Oh my.
The stone of love had disappeared for several generations. Nobody knew who had it, which they figured for a while was a good thing since somebody was after all 3. If nobody knew where the third was, that was a good thing. But now we know.
Okay. So
the 3rd stone's in the 3rd book.
The 3rd stone's in the 3rd book. There you go. So do you think that you will build on this? Is this a world that you think you'll go back in the future and do another?
I don't know if I would do another full novel. Noreen has a friend who has the gift of premonition, and I'm enjoying their interactions together. So she may have a short story that gets pulled and stuff like that. So far, there's been, as I said, usually it's a character for me that starts the ball rolling. For some writers, it's an incident or an issue or a question they want to answer, and then they create the characters who will do that. For me, it was characters. Lyria came to me first, and then suddenly I realized she had this. I thought it was a sister at first, but cousin actually. That was a time when I changed the story to make it work better. You know, it was better that they were related, but not actually sisters. And Noreen comes, almost seems to come out of left field, which makes her fun to write. But so far, there's not a 4th. There's definitely just these 3, but.
All I can think of is when they brought in, when the eldest was leaving Charmed, and they brought in
Paige, yes.
Paige, and they brought in Paige as the wild card.
Wild card, half sister to reconstitute the Charmed ones. Yeah. 3 is a very magical number. I mean, and there's so many. Nora Roberts was the one who really started the romance industry on connected novels. Everything was standalone pretty much until she started wanting to spend a little more time with each character. Eventually, she writes one series under a pen name where it's always the same heroine. They're technically a futuristic mystery series, her in Death series, but her romances are almost all now trios with the occasional quartet. But she was the one that changed that, and I think a lot of people like it. Noreen, Lyria, and Drew are the hero and heroine of Waves of Pleasure, but you'll see them again in the next 2 books as well. So you get to see how that relationship is holding up.
Yeah, well, and I think that those of us who read as I call it comfort or escape reading, or just as a a way to refill the soul. Part of it is when you get into a place, and the great example is like when you get into the world of Harry Potter, you're there, and with romance, there's a different couple in every book, but when you do the ones where it's all around a location or around this city or around this county or
Right.
around this family, and you meet the older brother and then you meet the different ones and then they all come in and all of these different things. And there's more romance that's out there that's coming from the male perspective than there ever used to be.
Yes.
So that's interesting as well. Do you see yourself going there at some point with your romance writing?
The male perspective is always in it. I don't only work from the head of my heroines. That changed, I want to say in the late 80s, early 90s. They started to do what's now called head hopping. And you have to be very careful not to do it mid-scene because it's basically like changing a camera angle constantly. You want to keep the scene in one person's point of view to a certain point, and then you switch it. So I do switch to the male point of view, but I don't kid myself. I don't know that I write the male point of view in any other way other than how a woman wants a man to sound, not necessarily how he actually sounds. I've been told my men sound like men, but I've got a girl's head, I definitely am writing them to sound the way I want, not necessarily.
Well, I want to thank you very much for coming, Rachel Kenley.
Well, it was lovely to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
I'm sorry that our Jersey girl, Rona Gofstein, couldn't join us.
I think she and I would have a lot in common.
Well, it might happen. And that's the end of this Unicorns, Dragons, and Other Creative Creatures.